Councillor Kirton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at this from two perspectives. Firstly, is the credibility and reputation of council in terms of its policy, the standing of its revenue and expenditure policy. And here we have the first hurdle. These are policies only adopted a year old in terms of our long-term plan. And here we are compromising those at the first hurdle. My colleague, Councillor Foss, has referred to this commercial decision, and here we have a group of consent holders who want the ratepayer to de-risk their commercial investment. That's the reality of this. The reality in terms of the debt itself are that for 2 years the amounts owing are outstanding. They're still outstanding, $257,000, and due this year a further $167,000. $470,000 on the table right now, and when we project out with a consent extension, 1.48 million. And we're supposed to believe that the consent holders, should we arrive at 2031 at the conclusion of their consent, are going to hand over 1.48 million. That's not going to happen. That's simply not going to happen. The ratepayer will bear the cost of these consent holders' default on their consent. The money's owed. They knew that when they took the commercial risk on this. They made a bid for the intellectual property, $100,000, knowing full well they were up for those charges. And here we are, already having dipped into the pockets of their local council to pay those charges. We're now asked the ratepayers of the region to pay. So I'm sorry, I can't support a deferral. It's simply not fair, not tenable either to the ratepayers of the region or to other consent holders. It's simply not equitable. The other aspect, which I'm rather astounded to hear my colleagues promote, is that it's consistent with our own policies and our aspirations for the environment and our aspirations for cleaning up the waterways. So when the ratepayers and the people of the region are being asked to believe that a dam of the volume of 90 million cubic metres deposited on the land, promoting a vastly increased quantum of economic activity derived from that land, is somehow going to be tenable when already we've exhausted that resource. We've exhausted the water resource and we've overcommitted in terms of the discharge to land that we've got. So how is that in keeping with our environmental aspirations? It's simply not. It's not tenable, it's not credible, and if we proceed down this road, we do an enormous damage, not only across the region to the reputation of this council, we do so nationwide. We're in a situation where we're teetering on the brink of putting this council's reputation back years, if not decades. The other thing, and I'm intrigued with the commentary from my colleague, Councillor Foss, when reciting from the Mayor's letter. The Mayor has promoted, if you like, the public good involved in this enterprise, this commercial enterprise. We're supposed to believe that the consent holders have some really high aspiration for public good, and yet 2 to 3 years down the track, those shares are still held in private hands. They haven't been handed over publicly. The opportunity was there for the consent holders to hand them over and make them available to some sort of public trust. They haven't done that. They're holding those and now are expecting this council and the ratepayers of the region to de-risk their investment. And I go to, Mr. Chair, the commentary from the Mayor of Hawke's Bay, Alex Walker, Central Hawke's Bay, where she recites and said, leave these decisions to or at least listen to the voice of the people of Central Hawke's Bay. Well, let's examine that for a moment. What have those voices said? We've just come through a process where 8 of the highest consuming water users in the region have gone out and asked for tranche 2 water. Another 15 million cubic metres of water to irrigate 3,000 extra hectares in the catchment. So what we've had is those water users giving two-finger salute to the community when we've got this overburden of water use in the region. So we're wanting to change land use in our region and in the catchment, and here we are doubling down on it. The other thing I'd be saying in terms of what the locals have said in Central Hawke's Bay, the Central Hawke's Bay Council allocated, I think, $250,000 to support water initiatives in the district. But what happened? 1 year's expenditure, something of $50,000-$60,000, and then a rates revolt. So the people of Central Hawke's Bay said, not us, we're not going to pay. So that's the voice that's coming from Central Hawke's Bay. Not us, we'll get the region to pay because we're not prepared to do it. And we're not prepared to put the shoulder to the wheel and meet our obligations to the water resources of the region. And concurring with my colleague, Michelle McElroy, who correctly identified that we are and are not meeting our obligations, and there's no way we can meet those obligations, particularly for Māori in that region in terms of the our resources. And I'm surprised at my colleagues advocating for such when those resources are vast at every opportunity, continue to repeat time and time again the damage done to the environment and the consequences for the awa. So on that basis, Mr Chair, my view is to stick with the policy. I'm encouraged by the opportunity for the consent holders to negotiate a reasonable and fair repayment regime, but I'm not prepared to burden the ratepayer again. 20 million already down the gurgler, and now we're expected to front up. And we know 1.48 million is the price that's on the table now for a remission of these fees. Thank you, Mr Chair.
Charles.
Right, a reply, Mr Chair.